Hi, this is Susan White, and I am so glad you're on this adventure with me. Today we're going to be discussing Session 3, the grief process. You know, this is a very difficult topic, and there's a lot to be covered, so we'll probably end up doing this in two parts. Because some of the things that I want to cover are going to be the feelings and emotions that a person can feel. I want to talk about the physical reactions, the emotional and psychological reactions, and even some of the spiritual reactions that a person can have while going through trauma and grief. We'll also spend a little bit of time talking about simple suggestions, ways to help people that you want to minister to, just giving some basic instructions on what to do. So, let's begin. What is grief? What does Webster's describe as grief? Well, it's deep sorrow, especially over the loss of a loved one. Another definition is an emotional reaction to a significant loss. And that's what we want to kind of cover today, is some of the significant losses, maybe other than death, that a person might be going through. You know, grief is an overwhelming journey. Very, very difficult. And when there's loss of anything, a person, a situation, something going on in your life that alters your normal way of living, there can be grief. And there can be deep grief. And you may not even realize oftentimes that you're in grief, depending on the situation of what you're going through. You know, there's sometimes people can have overwhelming and intense feelings and anger or rage or feelings they don't even understand, and surprises the individual themselves, much less the people going around them, saying, this isn't really like this person. I can't believe that they're responding the way that they are. Well, I believe that it is a journey and it is a process. Oftentimes we call it grief work because sometimes it takes a lot of work to process through this. For different people, it's different times. There's different stages. And that's where we can get hung up when we think that it's such and such a month we're going to feel this, and such a month we're going to feel that. We found out that it can happen, all these ranging feelings of emotions can be at different times in different places. But there are commonalities, and that's what I want to share with you today, that there are different feelings and emotions for certain situations, and some have acute stressors, and we're going to talk about that in our following session. And weakness, sometimes people think it's in grief, but it's not. Grief is not a weakness. Grief is a human emotion given by God, just like laughter. And I believe that Scripture shows that even Jesus knows this feeling, and he knows what it's like to walk through that. And it is so comforting to know that he does know what you're feeling and the agony that you might be suffering. So let's explore some events that this could be happening to. When I'm in a classroom setting, well, oftentimes I'll put 4 or 5 people in a group, and I will give them a particular scenario of a traumatic event. And then they will write down the physical, mental, emotional, financial, all the different feelings and emotions and reactions they think a person might have while going through this particular trauma. And so we're going to do that now. I'm just going to explain some, and you may be thinking of your own life or other people that are going through something difficult right now. And see if you don't identify that many of the things I'm going to talk about is what we call common or normal, and they didn't even realize it. And when you've gone through something, you may not have realized it. So I'd like to talk about something that just happened recently, and that is the trauma of the hurricane, and especially Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey came in and absolutely flooded Texas in the Houston area and there. So we're going to pick up like a woman has just come out of the shelter. She's been there maybe 3 to 5 days, and now she's gone home to her neighborhood and found it totally devastated. Her home completely flooded, and all different kinds of things and emotions that she might be feeling. So let's look at that. I would say that this person would still be in shock, that what they've seen, what they've heard, what they've witnessed, even a form of denial that you just cannot, your mind cannot comprehend the devastation in what you see. The person may be looking at their pictures completely lost, heirlooms, things that were precious to them that might have belonged to their mother or grandmother, or and things that cannot be replaced. You see, at first they're very happy because they are safe and sound, and that's so common as after when somebody survived a tornado or a hurricane or earthquake. They're so happy to be alive that that's all they can think of, and they're so feeling so blessed, which is true and right. But when the reality begins to set in, when they look around and they realize, yes, their life has been spared, but how do they pick up the pieces when it's been so shattered? Well, a person can even feel angry. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Not understanding. I would think this person would be physically exhausted from being in a shelter. Lack of sleep, fear, wonder, confusion, all those things. And when you don't have when you have lack of sleep, it is hard to function and it's hard to think clearly. So here this person is walking in and seeing that they do not have the finances to replace and they find out the insurance is not going to pay what they thought that they were going to pay. I think depression could definitely set in on someone when they realize something's totally out of their control and they're not able to handle. Fear of that financial obligation, fear of tomorrow, fear of another storm, fear of the unknown. Hard to stay on task. Let's look at the situation of a church shooting that just happened recently. Imagine you're sitting in your service, everything, and you're worshiping, and all of a sudden a gunman comes in and kills your pastor. Can you imagine the shock and disbelief and the denial, just like what the other people experienced in another traumatic event? But some other things that you might face would be the loss of security and safety. If you're not safe in your own church, where are you safe at? You may not ever want to leave your home, or every time you go out somewhere, it leaves you a feeling that something bad could happen. And another one would be the criminal justice system. If the person ends up being arrested and there's a trial, you're going to be part of a witness and having to go through and live through that account over and over again. Probably have a lot of startle response. What if the next time you sing a song, maybe you were in worship and singing a particular song when this happened, that might stay in your memory bank. Looking over your shoulder when you get in the car from going to the grocery store. Your life can be altered. You want to go back to normal, but you don't know how to go back to normal. You could even say, like, why God? Why? How could something like this happen? Even questioning God. And it's good God's big enough to handle that question. How about, let's look at another situation. How about an 85-year-old woman? Her husband passed away 2 years previously. And now the family is unable to take care of her, and she has to go to an assisted living. Now, she has all of good part of her faculty. She understands what's happening. But now she's being taken from her home and placed in a whole new environment. All the other feelings emotions that we have discussed, she could definitely feel. But some added things is a different type of confusion. What happened? Where am I going? Who's going to take care of me? Am I going to be safe? A deep sense of loneliness that she never had before, because she is going to be around strangers and new people. She has to start a different season, a different part of her life that she really doesn't want to have to do. Loss of independence. She knows she's been losing it all along as she's aged, but now other people are going to be dictating when she gets up, when she eats, what's going to happen next. Totally dependent on other people. big loss for a lot of people. Now, also end-of-life issues. The reality now that she knows that she is coming to the end of her life and being able to handle that loss, the loss of her youth, the loss of her life being married, and helplessness. I imagine a person in this situation feels totally helpless. They can't take care of their finances. They can hardly take care of their bodily functions. They can hardly take care of anything. How do we minister to people like this? How do we look and make and ease their life? One of the most common traumatic events, I believe, happens, and we see it all the time, and we work with people, and we're in church with people, and that's people who've gone through a divorce. Imagine you're in your mid-30s, your husband comes home, and you're surprised that he tells you that he's having an affair with someone else, and he's fallen in love with them, and he's leaving, and he walks out the door, and he's leaving you with the 2 children, and you're wondering, what am I going to do? Besides the loss of your mate, now the loss of security of what's going to happen to you. Possibly shame, whether it's warranted or not, of what you're going to feel. The financial burden. So you see, I'm bringing this up because I realize that we work right along people who are facing traumatic issues. They're in grief and may not even realize, because they may be so stuck in anger over a situation, but they're grieving nonetheless. You may be in a healing ministry, and in that healing room you don't realize all what this person is feeling and going through, because they may not understand it. They may not be able to put it into words. But now you'll have some tools to know how to put it into some words. So just kind of think for a moment, some of the things that we discussed. We talked about shame. See, I consider this, look at this as the human body and our human mind. We talked about the emotion of confusion. Most of these situations would bring in confusion. Depression. When you're overwhelmed and don't know what to do, depression can sneak up on you. Altered sleep. Without sleep, I'm telling you people, we cannot make good decisions. Life is difficult. Sometimes you'll sleep too much, or you'll have interrupted sleep. You go to sleep right away, but then you're waking up in the middle of the night, and you're not sure how to get back to sleep. And of course, you don't want to use drugs and use different things and alcohol to make your situation worse. And we're going to talk a little about that, about healthy grief and unhealthy grief. Anger. Sometimes people have never really had anger in their life before, and now they're thrown into a situation that they can't believe the feelings of rage that they have, and they don't know what to do with it. So they feel guilty because they feel this kind of anger. Guilt. I don't know how many calls and cases I went on everyone almost always felt guilty about something, whether it was warranted or not. It seems to be an emotion that we try to bring on ourselves, the if only, why did I do this, and everything. So imagine you're walking around one day, and all these emotions are inside of you, and they're just twirling around. It's like a roller coaster of emotions, and you have that. And then some days are better than other days. And some days you just might be just going down the road and you just kind of feel sleep deprived, so you're not able to function. But what about the days when they all come out and you don't know what to do? How hard that is. And for you who are trying to minister to them, it can be quite difficult. People can be in an unlovable, seems like, state of mind. But Jesus calls us to love the unlovable, to love those who are hurting. And I'm hoping that some of these things that I've said might be helpful to understand about people. So I want you to realize that we can make a difference in people's lives just by sitting and listening and understanding this grief process. In our next session, I want to go over some complicated grief and some healthy and unhealthy ways in which to work through it. We're going to talk about grief through crime victimization. We'll talk about suicide, expected and unexpected death, some of the complicated factors in grief with that. So until our next session, please remember to be a servant of mercy and release what's inside of you is this great power of compassion. And as you develop these skills, that we're being equipped to be able to help people in their deepest and darkest hour. What an opportunity. What an opportunity. What a privilege to come into others' suffering. Remember the compassion. So you're going to release that power of that compassion. So until next time.